The sky burned above Epsilon Eridani IV. What had started as a peaceful morning in the Novan colony had turned into chaos within minutes. The Mralki warships appeared without warning, their massive shapes blocking out the twin suns as they positioned themselves in attack formation. Lara Carson ran through the corridors of the colony's command center, the emergency sirens blaring in her ears. As colony administrator, she had drilled for emergencies countless times, but nothing had prepared her for an actual Mralki invasion. "Status report," she shouted, entering the main control room. Screens around the room showed the colony's outer settlements already in flames. 6 Mralki destroyers and 12 support vessels, reported Keith Brown, her security chief. His blue skin was pale with fear, the characteristic Novan speckles almost white against his face. "They've taken out our orbital defenses already. Ground assault has begun in sectors 3 and 4. Lara steadied herself against a console. The Mralki were known throughout the galaxy as merciless conquerors. They didn't take prisoners or establish occupation forces. They simply wiped out native populations and stripped planets of valuable resources. "Communications?" she asked. "Planetary comms are still online, but they've blocked all outgoing signals," said Maria Diaz, the communications specialist. Her fingers moved quickly over her console. "We can't reach the Galactic Concord." Lara looked at the tactical display. The nearest Concord military base was in the Proxima system, at least 4 days away at maximum speed. Even if they could get a message out, help would arrive too late. "The quantum beacon," she said quietly. The room fell silent. The quantum beacon was their last resort, a direct violation of Concord protocols to use except in the most dire circumstances. The device could send an instant distress signal across vast distances, but the energy surge would likely give away their command center's position. "Ma'am, if we activate it," Keith began. "We'll be their first target," Lara finished for him. "I know. Begin evacuation of all non-essential personnel. Get them to the underground shelters." Through the reinforced windows, she could see the orange glow of fires spreading across the colony's main settlement. In the distance, Mralki landing craft were touching down, disgorging troops and harvesting equipment. "The Mralki ships are changing position," reported Sam Wilson, the tactical officer. "They're moving to start systematic bombardment." Lara looked at the faces around her, people she had worked with for years, building this colony into a thriving community of 30,000 Novans. Now they faced extinction. "Activate the quantum beacon," she ordered. Maria hesitated only for a second before inputting the command codes. A low hum built within the walls as the powerful device charged. "Message parameters?" Maria asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Standard distress protocol. Include all available data on Mralki forces." The building shook as the first bombardment struck nearby. Dust fell from the ceiling. "We should include that the signal passed through Sector 8197, Keith suggested. Lara frowned. "The human territory." "Why?" "Just covering all bases. The signal will reach them first, even if they can't help." Lara nodded. The humans were newcomers to the Galactic Concord, admitted only 3 years ago. They had minimal spacefaring capability and only 2 colonized worlds. Their ships were primitive compared to Concord standards, but protocol demanded notification of all Concord members in range. "Add it to the transmission," she agreed. The quantum beacon reached full power, its distinctive tone rising to a pitch almost beyond hearing. On screens around the room, energy readings spiked dangerously. "Beacon ready," Maria reported. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered. "Do it," Lara ordered. Maria pressed the final command. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a pulse of energy surged through the building. The lights went out completely before emergency power kicked in. "Signal sent," Maria confirmed. The building shook again, more violently this time. Structural warnings flashed on the remaining operational screens. "Direct hit to the East Wing," Sam reported. "They'd found us." Lara stood straight, smoothing down her uniform jacket. Begin data purge. Evacuate all remaining personnel to fallback positions. As her team rushed to comply, she looked once more at the tactical display, showing the overwhelming Meralki force. The distress signal was away, racing across the galaxy at speeds beyond normal physics. But she knew the truth that no one wanted to say aloud. Help would come too late. The Novans of Epsilon Eridani IV were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. The Galactic Concord High Council chamber was rarely filled to capacity. Today, every seat was taken. Representatives from 300 species sat in rising tiers around the central speaking platform. The atmosphere was tense as reports of the Meralki attack on Epsilon Eridani IV appeared on everyone's data screens. Admiral Tsan stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms gesturing at the holographic display, showing the Meralki fleet positions. His gray skin reflected the red emergency lighting that had been active since the distress signal arrived. The Meralki force consists of 18 capital ships and at least 30 support vessels, he said, his translator converting his clicking speech into standard galactic common. Our nearest rapid response fleet is currently 4 days from the Epsilon Eridani system. A wave of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. Everyone knew what that meant. By the time help arrived, the colony would be destroyed. Can we not send a faster ship? Asked Representative Kalsa of the Tellurian Federation. Her feathered crest rose in agitation. Surely we have something that can get there sooner. Admiral Tsan shook his head. Our fastest scout ships could arrive in 2 days, but they carry no weapons capable of engaging Meralki destroyers. From the highest tier, an ancient voice spoke. Representative Zal of the Folian race leaned forward, his wrinkled face barely visible beneath his ceremonial hood. The Folians were among the oldest species in the Concord, respected for their wisdom. The distress signal would have passed through Sector 8197, Zal noted. Human space. There was a moment of puzzled silence before nervous laughter broke out among several representatives. The humans, said Defense Minister Gora. They can barely reach their own moon with their primitive technology. This wasn't entirely fair. Humans had developed faster than light travel, which was why they had been granted provisional membership in the Concord 3 years ago. But their ships were slow and few in number. Earth had only established 2 small colonies beyond their home system. Minister Gora is right, Admiral Tan said. The humans have no military presence outside their immediate territory. They have fewer than 20 interstellar vessels total, and only 6 with any form of armament. They're simply not a factor in this situation. Representative Zal nodded slowly, conceding the point. We should inform them officially, nonetheless, said Representative Julia Anderson, the human delegate. She was one of only 3 humans in the entire Concord central government. My people would want to know. Of course, Representative Anderson, said High Chancellor Vex. His translucent tentacles rippled in what the more experienced delegates recognized as impatience. But we must focus on practical responses. Admiral, what preparations are being made for the refugees? If there are any, someone muttered, not quietly enough. Admiral Tsan activated a new display. We're preparing refugee processing facilities in the Proxima system. Medical ships are already en route, but given typical Meralki tactics, he didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew the Meralki rarely left survivors. As the discussion continued, Representative Anderson quietly left her seat and moved to a private communication booth at the back of the chamber. She placed her hand on the security scanner and waited for the booth to seal around her. The air hummed as privacy fields activated. Priority channel to Earth Central Command, she said clearly. Authorization Anderson 7 Delta 9. The communication system processed her request. After a few seconds, the screen lit up with the Earth insignia. Representative Anderson, said a stern-faced man in a dark uniform. This is an unexpected contact. General Clark, we have a situation, she said. A distress signal from Epsilon Eridani IV. Mrelki Invasion Force. The colony is under heavy attack. The general's expression didn't change, but his posture straightened slightly. Epsilon Eridani is within our response zone. The Concord fleet won't arrive for 4 days, Anderson continued. The Council has essentially written off the colony. General Clark was silent for a moment. I understand. Thank you for the information, Representative. What will you do? She asked. The general's expression softened slightly. What we always do, Representative. The right thing. The connection ended. Anderson stood in the booth for a long moment before returning to the council chamber. The debate was still ongoing, with representatives arguing about resource allocation for the refugees and diplomatic responses to the Mrelki Empire. None of them noticed her small smile as she took her seat again. None of them had any idea what was about to happen. Admiral Grell stood on the command deck of the Mrelki flagship Merciless Harvest, watching with satisfaction as the bombardment of Epsilon Eridani IV continued. The view screen showed orange blooms of destruction spreading across the surface of the blue-green planet. His scaled skin gleamed under the harsh lights of the bridge as he turned to his second-in-command. Report on the resource scans, he ordered. Commander Vrex bowed slightly, the proper show of respect. Excellent results, Admiral. Initial readings show high concentrations of rare minerals in the northern continent. The biological material is being processed for fuel conversion. Biological material, a cold term for the bodies of the colonists. The Mrelki didn't waste anything, not even the species they destroyed. How long until the extraction teams can begin full operations? Grell asked. 24 hours, Admiral. We need to finish the cleansing phase first. Grell nodded and turned back to the view screen. The colony's defenses had been pathetically weak. Their orbital platforms had been destroyed in the first minutes of the attack. The ground forces had better equipment than expected, but nothing that could truly challenge Mrelki's superiority. Now it was simply a matter of systematic destruction. Admiral, we're picking up unusual readings, reported the sensor officer suddenly. Grell frowned. What kind of readings? Energy signatures, sir, coming from the direction of Sector 8197. Grell consulted his datapad. That's the empty sector. Nothing there but a primitive species with minimal space travel. Yes, sir, but these readings. The officer looked confused. They're moving faster than anything in our database. A sensor malfunction, Grell said dismissively. Run a diagnostic. Yes, Admiral. The officer turned back to his console while Grell returned his attention to the bombardment. The planet's atmosphere was starting to show signs of the firestorms that would soon rage across its surface. Perfect conditions for the harvesters. Admiral. The sensor officer's voice was higher now. The readings are confirmed. Multiple objects approaching at speeds that... Impossible, interrupted Commander Vrex. Nothing moves that fast. 12 minutes to intercept, the officer continued, ignoring the rebuke. Grell felt a flicker of unease. Raise shields. Move the support vessels behind the capital ships. The bridge crew rushed to comply as Grell studied the sensor readings himself. The objects were indeed moving at impossible speeds, faster than any known Concord technology. But that couldn't be right. The only species in this region was dropping out of FTL, shouted the tactical officer. The view screen flickered as 7 sleek, angular vessels appeared suddenly in the midst of the Mrelki fleet. Their design was unlike anything Grell had seen before, black hulls with sharp edges that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They were smaller than Mrelki destroyers, but moved with incredible precision, positioning themselves between the Mrelki ships and the planet. Who are they? Demanded Grell. How did they get past our outer sensors? Unknown design, reported the tactical officer. No match in our database. They're broadcasting, said the communications officer. All frequencies, all languages. Put it through, ordered Grell. A calm, steady voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect galactic standard. This is Captain Alan Brooks of the United Earth Naval Forces. You are engaged in an illegal assault on a galactic Concord colony. Cease hostilities immediately or be neutralized." The bridge fell silent. Commander Vrex was the first to recover. "Earth? The humans." He laughed, a harsh sound. "They barely have interstellar capability." Grill studied the ships on the screen more carefully. Their positioning was perfect, tactical, no wasted movement. And their speed. "Open a channel," he ordered. When the connection was established, Grill spoke with all the authority of a Mralki admiral. "This is Admiral Grill of the Mralki Empire. You have entered a combat zone. Depart immediately or be destroyed." The response was immediate. "This is your final warning, Admiral. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from this system." Grell snarled. "Target the lid ship. Full power to forward batteries." The Mralki flagship's main weapons charge, the energy building to levels that could shatter a small moon. The targeting systems locked onto the nearest human vessel. "Fire," ordered Grell. The beam lanced out, a spear of pure energy that should have vaporized the human ship instantly. Instead, just before impact, the ship simply moved. Not a slow, lumbering turn like Concord vessels, but an impossible twist that defied physics itself. The beam passed harmlessly through empty space. "How?" Grell began. And then the humans opened fire. The first human shot didn't destroy the Mralki ship. It didn't need to. A beam of blue-white energy lanced out from the human vessel, striking the Mralki flagship with surgical precision. The beam didn't hit the main hull or weapon systems. Instead, it sliced through a specific section of the outer ring. The shield generator. "Shields down on sectors 3 through 7, shouted the Mralki tactical officer, his voice rising in panic. Before Admiral Grell could respond, 2 more human ships fired. Their weapons hit with impossible accuracy, targeting the flagship's engine control and weapons guidance systems. The shots weren't designed to destroy. They were designed to disable. "Return fire," Grell roared. The Mralki fleet responded, unleashing a barrage that should have annihilated the smaller human vessels. But the humans moved like nothing Grell had ever seen. Their ships twisted and turned at angles that seemed to defy the laws of physics, evading most of the Mralki fire. The few shots that connected with human ships splashed harmlessly against shields far more advanced than anything in the Mralki arsenal. On the command deck of the UEN Defender, Captain Alan Brooks sat calmly in his command chair. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency. There was no shouting, no panic, just the quiet hum of professionals at work. "Status report," Brooks said. Lieutenant Sharon Jones looked up from her tactical display. 3 Mralki destroyers disabled. No casualties reported on their side. Our shields holding at 92%. Brooks nodded. "And the colony?" "The Mralki ground forces are still active, sir," reported Commander Great Patterson from the operations console. "But the orbital bombardment has stopped." "Good. Signal the Jefferson and the Lincoln to break off and begin dropship deployment. Focus on civilian extraction points." "Yes, sir." Brooks turned his attention back to the main view screen. The Mralki were regrouping, forming a defensive line with their undamaged ships protecting the crippled vessels. "They're preparing another attack," Lieutenant Jones warned. "Let them come," Brooks said. "Maintain current positions." The Mralki attack came in a wave of energy beams and missile fire. Once again, the human ships moved with unbelievable precision, dodging most of the incoming fire. Commander Patterson looked up from his console. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Mralki command ship." "Put it through," Brooks ordered. Admiral Grell's face appeared on the screen. His scaled features were tight with fury. "What are you?" he demanded. "These are not human capabilities." Brooks allowed himself a small smile. "You're operating on outdated intelligence, Admiral. Humanity has chosen to keep certain capabilities private. Impossible. Your species only achieved space travel a century ago. And yet here we are," Brooks replied calmly. "I'll repeat my order. Stand down and withdraw from this system, or we will be forced to take more aggressive action." Grill snarled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The Mralki Empire does not retreat. All vessels, concentrate fire on the human flagship." The transmission cut off. "They've made their choice. Take out their propulsion systems. I want those ships dead in space." "Yes, sir." What followed was unlike anything the Mralki had experienced in centuries of warfare. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, as if they could predict every Mralki maneuver before it happened. Their weapons fire struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling engines, weapons, and communication systems without destroying the vessels themselves. In the Concord Council chamber, the representatives watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded on their screens. The data was coming from long-range sensors, delayed by several minutes. "This is impossible," whispered Admiral San. Representative Anderson stood quietly near the back of the chamber, her face betraying nothing. "How are they doing this?" demanded Chancellor Vex. "Where did these ships come from?" No one had an answer. The tactical displays showed 3 more Mralki ships disabled, their engines cold, weapons offline. Not destroyed, deliberately spared, but completely neutralized. On the Mralki flagship, Admiral Grell watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically crippled. Ship after ship reported critical systems failures. Not a single human vessel had been seriously damaged. "Admiral," said Commander Vrex, his voice shaking, "what are your orders?" Grell stared at the tactical display. In just 15 minutes, the humans had disabled over half his fleet. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. "Admiral." Before Grell could answer, the view screen lit up again with Captain Brooks' face. "Admiral Grell," the human said calmly, "your fleet is neutralized. I suggest you reconsider my offer while you still can." While the space battle raged above, the situation on the surface of Epsilon Eridani IV was equally shocking to the Mralki ground forces. Commander Jarek led his troops through the burning ruins of the main Novan settlement. His soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, shooting any survivors they found. The Novans were no match for Mralki combat prowess. Their blue-skinned bodies littered the streets as Jarek's forces pushed toward the colony's resource center. "Set up the harvesting equipment in Sector 5. Jarek ordered over his comm unit. "Begin processing as soon as." His orders were interrupted by a strange sound overhead. Looking up, Jarek saw small black objects descending through the smoke-filled sky. They were too small to be ships, yet moved too precisely to be debris. "Unknown objects entering our airspace," reported his tactical officer. "They appear to be some kind of drop pods." Jarek signaled his troops to take defensive positions. The objects slowed as they approached the ground, landing with surprising gentleness in a clear area about 200 meters away. "Prepare for engagement," Jarek ordered. "Whatever they are, destroy them." His soldiers raised their weapons as the pods began to open. Jarek expected to see Concord peacekeepers or perhaps some unknown species. What emerged instead sent a wave of confusion through his ranks. Humans, just humans, but they were wearing something strange. Form-fitting suits of dark material with glowing blue lines running across them. "These are the primitives from Sector 8197, said his second-in-command with a laugh. "This will be over quickly." Jarek wasn't so sure. The humans were deploying with unusual discipline, moving into formation with practiced ease. He counted only 30 of them against his force of over 300 Mralki warriors. "Open fire," he ordered. The Mralki weapons blazed, sending streaks of energy toward the human positions. The humans didn't scatter or panic. Instead, the air around them shimmered as personal shield systems activated. Technology the Mralki had believed was still theoretical. Then the humans began to move. Their suits clearly enhanced their physical abilities, allowing them to sprint at speeds that matched even the naturally athletic Mralki. They dodged between buildings and rubble with unnatural grace, flanking the Mralki positions before Jarek could adjust his strategy. The human weapons were equally surprising, compact energy rifles that cut through Mralki armor with ease. But most shocking was their obvious restraint. The humans were firing at legs and arms, deliberately avoiding kill shots when possible. Fall back to secondary positions, Jarek ordered as his front line began to crumble. As his troops retreated, Jarek watched in disbelief as a single human soldier lifted a collapsed wall section, weighing at least 2 tons, to free trapped Novan civilians. The human's powered suit glowed brighter at the joints as it amplified his strength to impossible levels. Across the colony, similar scenes were playing out. Small teams of humans were systematically securing key areas, establishing medical evacuation points, and engaging Mralki forces with overwhelming tactical superiority. At the colony's main medical center, a human squad led by Lieutenant Patrick White had established a defensive perimeter around hundreds of wounded Novans. The Mralki had surrounded the building, determined to eliminate all survivors as per their standard protocol. "They're coming again," warned Sergeant Kimberly Lee, checking her weapons charge. "At least 60 of them this time." Lieutenant White nodded calmly. His squad consisted of just 12 soldiers, but they had already repelled 2 Mralki assaults. "Connor, how's our shield holding up?" White asked. Private Jeff Connor checked the portable shield generator they had deployed. 70%, sir. It'll hold for another wave." The lieutenant tapped his communication unit. "All units, prepare for contact. Remember, non-lethal if possible. We want prisoners, not bodies." As the Mralki charged the position, the humans responded with coordinated fire, their weapons set to stun when possible. 3 humans moved to higher positions, providing covering fire while the others engaged in close-quarters combat. Inside the medical center, Dr. Lisa Harris worked frantically to save Novan lives. She had never treated alien physiology before today, but her medical suit was feeding her information about Novan biology in real time, guiding her actions. "More incoming wounded," called a human medic, as soldiers carried in injured Novans. A small Novan child looked up at Dr. Harris with wide, frightened eyes. "Are you the help they said would never come in time?" the child asked in broken galactic standard. Dr. Harris smiled as she applied a healing gel to the child's injured arm. "Yes," she said simply. "We're here now." 3 hours after the first human ships arrived, the battle for Epsilon Eridani IV was over. The Mralki fleet hung motionless in space, disabled but largely intact. On the planet's surface, the last pockets of Mralki resistance had surrendered, faced with the impossible choice between yielding or fighting an enemy they could not defeat. Admiral Grell stood in his flagship's conference room, his scales dulled with fatigue and shock. Across from him sat Captain Alan Brooks, flanked by 2 human officers. Neither side was armed. A gesture of trust that Grell found almost as surprising as the human victory. "Your terms," Grell asked simply. Brooks slid a data pad across the table. "All Mralki forces will withdraw from this system. Your wounded will be treated and returned to you. Your ships will be repaired enough for safe travel back to your territory, but weapon systems will remain offline." Grell blinked slowly, the Mralki equivalent of surprise. "You're letting us go?" "Yes." "Why?" "You have won. By the rules of war, our lives and ships are yours to claim." Brooks leaned forward slightly. "Those aren't our rules, Admiral." On the planet below, human dropships continued to land, bringing medical teams, engineers, and relief supplies. Within hours, they had established field hospitals in every major settlement and begun distributing food and clean water to the survivors. Director Lara Carson, her uniform torn and dirty, watched in amazement as human teams worked with incredible efficiency. She stood outside the colony's main administration building, now serving as a coordination center for relief efforts, as a human officer approached her. "Director Carson, I'm Commander Laura Bennett, Humanitarian Response Team." Carson shook the offered hand, still struggling to process everything that had happened. "How did you get here so fast?" she asked. The nearest Concord forces were days away. Commander Bennett smiled. We were closer than you thought. Earth maintains forward operating bases near all major Concord colonies. Just quietly. But the Concord reports said humans had limited space capabilities. Yes, Bennett agreed. That's what the reports said. Before Carson could ask more questions, a small Novan child ran up to Bennett, tugging at her uniform. The commander knelt down to eye level with the child. What can I do for you? She asked gently. My mother needs medicine, the child said. The blue doctors don't have the right kind. Bennett nodded seriously. Let's go find your mother. As the commander walked away with the child, Carson turned to see a group of human engineers already working to restore power to the colony's damaged grid. In the distance, she could see medical tents where human doctors treated Novan and Ralki wounded side by side. 4 days later, when the Galactic Concord Rapid Response Fleet finally arrived, they found a fully operational relief effort already underway. The Meralki fleet had departed under escort from 2 human vessels. Temporary shelters housed displaced colonists, and reconstruction of critical infrastructure had begun. Admiral Tsan beamed down with a team of Concord officials, expecting to find devastation. Instead, he was greeted by Director Carson and Captain Brooks in a functioning command center. This is unexpected, Admiral Tsan said, looking around at the busy operations room where humans and Novans worked side by side. The humans arrived within an hour of our distress signal, Carson explained. They drove off the Meralki and immediately began rescue operations. Admiral Tsan turned to Captain Brooks. How? Your fleet was never reported to have this capacity. Brooks smiled politely. There are many things about humanity that haven't been reported, Admiral. In a quiet corner of the command center, Commander Bennett was speaking with a Concord medical officer. Your treatment protocols for Novan physiology are remarkably advanced, the Concord doctor noted. We weren't aware humans had such knowledge. Bennett shrugged. We learn quickly. And your field surgery techniques, I've never seen anything like them. The survival rates you've achieved are beyond our standard expectations. We've had a lot of practice, Bennett said quietly. The doctor looked at her curiously. With Novan physiology. With trauma, Bennett corrected. Humans have a long history of treating battlefield injuries. Outside, more Concord ships were arriving in orbit. News of what had happened at Epsilon Eridani was spreading throughout the galaxy. The story was always the same. A distress signal was sent, and humans arrived. Humans with technology and capabilities far beyond what anyone had believed possible. What confused the Concord representatives most wasn't the humans' sudden display of military power. It was how they used that power, not for conquest or revenge, but for protection and healing. 1 week after the Battle of Epsilon Eridani IV, the Galactic Concord High Council convened an emergency session. The circular chamber was packed beyond capacity as representatives from every member species gathered to discuss what many were now calling the human question. High Chancellor Vex called the session to order, his tentacles rippling with barely controlled agitation. We are here to determine how the humans managed to conceal their true capabilities from the Concord for 3 years, he announced. And more importantly, what those capabilities actually are. The chamber erupted in voices as dozens of representatives tried to speak at once. Admiral Tsan finally gained the floor. Our investigation has revealed disturbing facts, he said. The human ships that engaged the Meralki do not match any vessels in our official registry. They appear to be part of a separate fleet that humans never disclosed during their provisional membership application. Murmurs swept through the chamber. Concealing military assets was a serious violation of Concord membership protocols. Furthermore, Tsan continued, the technology displayed by these vessels exceeds anything in known space. Their propulsion systems, weapons capabilities, and defensive measures are at least 200 years beyond current Concord standards. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Chancellor Vex turned to Representative Julia Anderson, who sat calmly amid the storm of accusations. Representative Anderson, what explanation does Earth offer for this deception? Anderson stood, her expression composed. The Earth government has authorized me to introduce someone who can better address your concerns. She gestured to a figure standing in the shadows near the entrance. With the Council's permission, I present Ambassador Richard Nelson of the United Earth Government. A tall, distinguished human with gray hair walked to the center of the chamber. Unlike Anderson, who wore the blue robes of a Concord representative, Nelson wore a simple black uniform with a single silver pin on the collar. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," Nelson said, his voice carrying easily through the large space. "I understand your confusion and concern. When humanity joined the Concord, we did withhold certain information about our technological capabilities. For this, I offer no excuse, only explanation. Please proceed," Chancellor Vex said stiffly. Nelson nodded. Humanity's development followed a different path than most species in the Concord. While many of you achieved space travel before resolving your internal conflicts, Earth unified only after centuries of warfare. He touched a small device on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber floor, showing scenes from human history, armies clashing across different eras, from ancient battles to modern conflicts. "Our history is marked by almost constant warfare," Nelson continued. "This drove rapid technological advancement in certain areas, particularly weapons, defensive systems, and medical treatment for combat injuries. The display changed to show human ships and soldiers, their capabilities far beyond what had been presented during Earth's admission to the Concord. When we finally achieved global peace and encountered other species, we made a decision," Nelson explained. "We would present ourselves not as we were, but as we wished to be seen. A young, somewhat naive species still finding its way in the galaxy." "You lied," stated a Folian representative bluntly. "We omitted," Nelson corrected. "We showed you our civilian technology, our cultural achievements, our scientific understanding. We simply didn't show you our military capacity." "Why?" demanded Admiral San. Nelson's expression softened. "Because of how others have reacted throughout history when discovering a militarily advanced neighbor. Fear leads to preemptive action. We wanted you to know us as people before you knew us as a potential threat." The chamber was silent as the representatives processed this information. It was Representative Zoll who finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying unexpected weight. "And your unified planetary government, was that also hidden from us?" Nelson nodded. "Most Concord species achieve unified planetary rule only after centuries of space exploration and external threats. Humanity unified through internal struggle, reaching consensus through conflict rather than necessity." Chancellor Vex leaned forward. "What else have you concealed, Ambassador?" "Much," Nelson admitted, "but not out of malice. We simply needed, to be certain we would be accepted as equals rather than feared as conquerors." The holographic display changed again, showing the human relief efforts on Epsilon Eridani IV, soldiers helping injured Novans, engineers rebuilding infrastructure, doctors treating the wounded regardless of species. 2 months after the events at Epsilon Eridani IV, the galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality. The galactic concord had been thrown into turmoil by the revelations about humanity's true nature. Some species called for Earth's expulsion from the Concord. Others suggested a military alliance. A few even proposed putting restrictions on human space travel. In the end, the Concord did what large political bodies often do when faced with unprecedented situations. They formed a committee. The Human Integration Commission met in a neutral space station orbiting a dead star, far from any inhabited worlds. Representatives from 12 major Concord species sat across from a human delegation led by Ambassador Richard Nelson. "Your proposal is unusual," said Chancellor Vex, who had been appointed to lead the commission. "We believe it's the best path forward," Nelson replied. "Earth will share its medical technology, defensive systems, and agricultural innovations with the Concord. In return, we ask for full membership and participation in the Concord's defense planning." Admiral Tan tapped a claw against the table. The problem. Ambassador, his trust. You concealed your capabilities once. How can we be certain you aren't still hiding something? You can't, Nelson said simply. Just as we can't be certain that every Concord species has revealed all their capabilities. Trust must be built over time through actions, not words. The debate continued for hours, with various representatives expressing concerns and demands. Through it all, Nelson remained calm, neither defensive nor apologetic. Meanwhile, on Epsilon Eridani IV, a more practical form of integration was taking place. Human engineers worked alongside Novan builders to reconstruct the colony. The latest in human agricultural technology was being implemented, promising yields 3 times higher than before the attack. In the colony's new medical center, Dr. Lisa Harris was training Novan medical staff in advanced trauma care. The blue-skinned aliens watched with fascination as she demonstrated techniques developed over centuries of human warfare. "Why share this knowledge with us?" asked a Novan doctor. "Your species could dominate the galaxy with your technology." Dr. Harris looked up from the medical simulator. "And then what? Rule through fear. Stand alone against whatever comes next. That's not the future we want." Similar scenes played out across the colony, where humans freely shared their knowledge and skills without expectation of payment or political advantage. It was this, more than any official declaration, that began to change how the galaxy viewed humanity. Back at the Concord headquarters, the final vote on Earth's status was about to take place. Thousands of representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for what would be a historic decision. Chancellor Vex called for order as Ambassador Nelson waited calmly at the speaker's podium. "Before we vote," Vex announced, "we have received a communication from Epsilon Eridani IV. Director Carson wishes to address the council." The main screen lit up, showing Lara Carson standing in the rebuilt colony center. Behind her, humans and Novans worked side by side. "Honorable representatives," she began, "I understand your fear of humanity. 2 months ago, I might have shared it, but I have seen these humans not just fight for us, but bleed for us, work for us, teach us. They had the power to conquer, but chose to protect. They had knowledge they could have sold, but chose to share." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "What arrived at our colony when we sent our distress signal was not the horror many of you now fear. What arrived was humanity at its best. Powerful, yes, but guided by compassion rather than conquest. If that horrifies you, perhaps the problem lies not with them, but with your expectations." The chamber was silent when the transmission ended. After a moment, Representative Zoll stood, his ancient frame rising slowly. "I have lived long enough to see many species join the Concord," he said. "None have entered under such unusual circumstances, but perhaps that is fitting. Humans are an unusual species. They developed weapons that could destroy worlds, then chose not to use them. They achieved the power to conquer, then chose to protect. They mastered violence, then chose peace." He looked at Ambassador Nelson. "What horrifies us is not just your capacity for destruction, but the realization that we have misunderstood you from the beginning. You are not simply warriors or diplomats. You are both, and that makes you unlike any species we have encountered." The vote that followed was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Concord, with special responsibility for rapid response to distress calls throughout the galaxy. As Nelson left the chamber, Admiral San approached him.